Well, the tropical nation of Maldives has seen a lot of political disturbance. In fact, in the days before this particular day, we've seen, in fact, violence breaking out and also a period of emergency. But there's been a man, in fact, the current foreign minister, who's been at the forefront of, in fact, upholding the democratic values. He was there in 2018 and he was there, in fact, in 2008 as well. And he famously said that I've joined the MDP to, in fact, prevent the gates of democracy from closing. In fact, thank you very much, Foreign Minister Abdulla Shahid, for joining us. And this is, in fact, your first visit after the democracy was restored in complete and, in fact, after the inauguration ceremony. But I want to begin by asking you, how has it been? It's been a difficult fight for you personally and your colleagues as well to restore democracy completely, because we've been in touch over the last many months and you informed us only about the protests, the entire fight to uphold democracy. How difficult for you was to restore this democracy under the leadership of President Saleh?
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here in India after we have won the election, after President Saleh's inauguration, and after restoring democracy. As you have rightly said, we have had a tough struggle. President Saleh has been in the forefront and he has led this fight against the dictatorship of President Yamin. Ultimately, it was the will of the people, the unity of the people against democracy which won the day. And I must thank you personally for the continued interest that you have taken in bringing our story to the Indian people throughout our struggle.
Well, we wish that democracy continues, but the focus has been India as well. We saw Prime Minister Modi at the inauguration ceremony that was televised live all across the globe. But you personally, in your own words, have said that India is one of the closest allies and will remain so. The relationship is being built. How would you characterize the relationship between India and Maldives right now, considering the kind of embarrassment we've seen in the recent times under the leadership of President Yamin, of course, the continuous delay in the foreign policy, the kind of U-turns that President Yamin really took?
I had the privilege of receiving Prime Minister Modi at the airport, and also I had the opportunity of sitting at the meeting between Prime Minister and President Saleh. I felt nothing but warmth. I felt nothing but friendship grow. And the two leaders embraced themselves into a new era of Maldives-India relationship. I think the things of the past, the inconsistencies of the past, the disagreements of the past, and the whipping up of ultra-nationalism between our two countries are a thing of past. India and Maldives have been good friends, great friends, from time immemorial, and we have benefited from each other, and we should of course have that in mind, that we are two countries that within the Indian Ocean who have only the interest of our people and the security and peace of the Indian Ocean. And we will not compromise in any of these things.
Well, Prime Minister Modi was trying to visit Maldives for a very long time. You saw how the visit could not happen in 2015, and now finally he was there for the inauguration and you chose him to in fact be as a special guest. But now you're in New Delhi. You chose India as your first foreign visit, after the government really came to power. What are your focus areas, if I can ask you, Minister? Because, Maldives values India as a very, very close partner. Tomorrow when you meet the ministers here, what exactly will be your message? What will be your focus areas? What will be your perhaps requests or expectations from the Indian government?
Many in India watched the inauguration of President Saleh live on different TV channels, and the arrival of Prime Minister Modi to the National Stadium and the manner in which he was received by the thousands who were gathered showed the importance that the people of the Maldives attached to the relationship between our two countries. Tomorrow I will be meeting the foreign minister and different ministers, and I'm also honored to call on the president of India day after tomorrow. The message that I bring to India is that we are a friend, and we have been a friend. It's only a couple of years of dictatorship that has tried to put a wedge between our two countries. The role India could play in the development of Maldives is immense. You are the closest neighbor. Your economy is huge. You have thousands and thousands of tourists traveling. Our country is a tourist destination, and we both can benefit from increased tourist contacts. We also can benefit from intra-trade between our two countries. As a tourist destination, we import a lot of our products, a large quantity of it even now from India. But if we can make these processes easier, it would be a relief for both countries. We also need easier visa access for Maldivians as well as Indian expertise to travel to Maldives and work in the Maldives. For our students, we need easier access to your academic institutions.
Right.
We are beginning our government with massive financial difficulties, because the previous government has been most irresponsible in the manner in which it has borrowed internationally and driven the country into debt, huge sums of debt. We are seeking assistance to overcome our budgetary difficulties from the Indian government. We are also seeking assistance from the Indian government in infrastructure building. I'm sure that Indian government will be most receptive and most generous, as in the past, to our requests.
Well, since you mentioned the debt, that was going to be my next question. You know, would you agree with me if I would be liberal in saying that under President Yamin, there was a strategic kind of a land grab happening in Maldives at the behest of a certain foreign power, and you know what country I'm referring to, and there was continuous interference in the internal affairs of Maldives, and perhaps that upset New Delhi as well. Will there be some kind of a reversal in the policy? The objective, the entire foreign policy will be in a newer dimension under your leadership?
Well, debt is with a capital D when we speak about it in the parliament now, because last 5 years as a member of parliament, I have had no opportunity to get these figures from the then dictatorship of Yamin. They prevented the parliament from getting the actual figures of how much they have been borrowing. Even today, when we are in government, the figures that we are getting from different departments do not tally. So we do not yet know how much we are indebted to any single or more countries. But soon we will be able to find out to whom and how much we owe. It would be then that we will be able to make informed decision on how to proceed with it. All we know is that the debt burden on the country after President Yamin's government is huge, and as a country we may not be able to take the burden because of the corruption that has been involved in these borrowings. President Solih has constituted a commission to look into these financial crimes, and we are seeking international assistance, including from the United States, India and Japan, and we will also be engaging international auditors to see and examine these crimes, and we will go after the money.
So will you only go after the money, or will you go also against the perpetrators? Because we've seen the kind of political arrests that happened in the previous regime, the autocratic regime. So after the commission comes up with its inquiry, after the entire probe ends, do you think there could be some action against President Yamin as well?
We are not a revengeful government, but anyone who has swindled money, who has been involved in corruption, after the investigations, it will be up to the Prosecutor General to decide on how to proceed. According to Maldivian Constitution, the President and the Executive has no authority on how the prosecution goes. We came into government saying that we will abide by law, that we want rule of law to be established. So it will be unfair for me to comment whether we will go after individuals. It will be up to the Prosecutor General.
Well, you mentioned about the bilateral trade ties between India and Maldives and the kind of expectations you have. What happens to the free trade agreement, that happened between Maldives and China? I know when it actually happened, there was a lot of eyebrows that were raised. There was a lot of concern about how such free access is certainly being given without any kind of national security or the concerns of the Maldives people really kept in mind. Do you think there could be a reversal on that? There could be a rethink on that? And how would you see the trade ties between India and Maldives now?
And again, I was a member of Parliament when this happened. I, for one, was not informed of the sitting. Several of my colleagues in the opposition were not informed of that sitting on that day. It took about 6-7 minutes within the National Security Committee to review a 1,000-page document and for the government to sign the agreement. It's unfair that we should have rushed an agreement of that importance through the Parliament on such a manner. Now that I'm the Minister of Foreign Affairs, I have been asked this question many times. But again, I'm not in a position to comment on it unless I can review this 1,000-page document. The government is in the process of reviewing, and as soon as we review it, we will see which direction we would have to take. What we know is that we will not be able to commit ourselves to a document which has been put through the Parliament, not in the proper process.
Right. On Monday, when you meet your Indian counterpart, there will be an interesting first time a three-nation maritime defense trilateral meet happening in Maldives as well. India, Sri Lanka and Maldives will be beginning that tomorrow. But what I want to ask you is that do you think it's time to strengthen the defense and security ties between India and Maldives as well? In that concern about the Indian notion has been paramount for New Delhi. How do you see that security scenario as of now?
The Dosti exercises that you just mentioned has been going on for quite a long time.
Yes.
And it has been a cornerstone of the trilateral, tri-nation defense cooperation. Yes. I see that this will go on, it will continue, and when we see that the process needs to be strengthened, I'm sure that our three nations will be united in moving forward. I see that time has tested Dosti and it is a proven success.
All right. About several multilaterals that have been happening where Maldives and India have been apart, but SAARC has been one such platform which has seen a rough road over the last 2 years or more. I was in some of the SAARC foreign minister meetings that took place recently, but unfortunately due to the regional security environment, it hasn't been happening. And some countries in fact boycotted it and others had to in fact pull back, I remember 2 years back. How do you see SAARC developing? Do you think there's a deadlock completely, or is there a chance to revive this platform because perhaps lessons for that particular country haven't really been learnt?
I think SAARC is a process. We are going through that process. We started SAARC way back in 1980s, agreeing to not to discuss contentious issues. First to unify, get ourselves unified on issues on which we can agree. I think we have gone past that. It is time that we started addressing the contentious issues. And unless the security aspects in the region are addressed, I'm seeing that any future progress of SAARC may not be viable. But I'm sure that the leadership of South Asia is capable of overcoming these challenges. We need to start addressing the core issues of the region.
Mm-hmm. You know, one of the issues, Minister, has been for New Delhi terrorism, where India has been a long-standing victim for almost 3 decades now. And you mentioned SARC and how contentious issues need to be discussed at that platform as well. But there's been a growing reign of terror from our neighboring nation, Pakistan, continuously. While New Delhi has addressed these concerns outside at the United Nations and several other places as well, there has been considerable support in several countries in Asia as well. Does Maldives also support India's fight against terror? And perhaps, you know, all those people, all those nations who have been in fact providing safe haven or safe sanctuaries need to be addressed immediately so that there is a peace across South Asia.
Maldives has been a country which has suffered, which has experienced the wrath of terrorism. We are a country which is dependent on tourism, which requires to avoid any events like this. And therefore, our international standing, our position on terrorism has been unequivocal, and we will continue to be a very vocal nation, both internationally and regionally, on terrorism.
All right, one last question before I let you go, because you have a busy schedule ahead. Minister, how do you see, you know, those critics who told President Yamin till now that there's been considerable China's hegemony in the region, not just in Maldives, but all across the Indian Ocean region as well? Do you think there could be a change now in the overall setup, and there could be a balance of power of sorts from Maldives as well? Because the foreign policy has been a little hot and cold in the past over the last few years. Do you see there would be a more pragmatic approach in your leadership and in the leadership of President Solih?
What President Yamin tried to do is to play India against China and China against India. Yes. It is something that countries should not do. China and India has good relations. China has investments here in India. India has investments in China, and both countries talk to each other, exchange high-level bilateral visits, and are on good terms. And if a country like the Maldives and a dictator like Yamin tries to play one against the other, the end result would be what we have seen in the Maldives today. So we would not make that mistake. President Solih's foreign policy would be to engage with all countries, as he rightly said in his inaugural speech. Our foreign policy is based on friendship and cooperation with all countries who would want to have an engagement with the Maldives and be part of the international community.
And it would be unfair if I don't ask you some of the policies that were criticized by MDP as well in the past of President Yamin, including the visa regime. You know, the Indian workers were not allowed or given easy access to visas, and also those 2 helicopters, you know, there was a question about them. Do you think there could be a reversal, or already there's been a reversal on those some policies, and there could be more as well?
Well, on visa, as I said, I'm looking forward to signing a new visa agreement by the time President Solih makes his maiden visit to Delhi. I'm hoping that both our countries would be able to come to an agreement on which Maldivians will be able to travel to India more freely and be able to benefit from the academic institutions and medical establishments here, which will lack in the Maldives. For the Indian experts and technical people, there is a job market in the Maldives, and during President Yamin's time in office, he has purposely prevented this from happening. Maldives has great potential for Indian investors, and they also need to be given access, easy access. Of course, we will make a way for Indian experts as well as business community to be there.
All right, Foreign Minister, thank you very much. It was a pleasure and an honor speaking to you. We wish you a lot of prosperity and happiness in the days ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.